Hello and welcome to the Ruby and Pearls Knitting Podcast. My name's Leah. I am coming to you from West Wales in the UK, where I live with my partner and our two dogs, Ruby and Pearl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Pearl would like to say hi, and you probably can hear Ruby walking around. They've just been for a walk, so fingers crossed they're going to actually settle down and sleep, but there's a dog barking outside and there's construction work, so I'm really sorry if there's cuts and noises and things. Hopefully they'll just relax and have a nap. As I said, my name's Leah. I am coming to you from West Wales in the UK. I'm a knitter primarily, but I also like to crochet and dabble in other fibre crafts. And I'm also an aspiring knitwear designer. So I'm really excited to be here and to show you a few of my projects. I'm going to do a very standard knitting podcast, the format that we're all used to and we all enjoy. I really hope the lighting and the sound is okay. This is my first time filming, so we'll see how this goes. I have one finished object and I've got 5 whips, I think. So before we dive in, you can find me as Leah Amber Knits on Instagram and on Ravelry. I will also link my... Oh, hello, Ruby. This is a really good spot for filming, isn't it? Because this is where Ruby likes to stand and be nosy. And there is something going on out there. So if you don't like dogs, this podcast might be a struggle. But let's get into it. As I said, you can find me as Leah Amber Knits on Ravelry and on Instagram. I'm not very active on Ravelry. I mostly use it as a pattern database, really. I am very active on Instagram and I love to chat to people, and I've made so many lovely friends through watching podcasts and chatting to people. So yeah, let's get started. My finished object for today is the cardigan that I'm wearing. This is the Pearly cardigan, named after my puppy Pearl, and it is a design of mine. I'll just show you some of its features. It is a top-down saddle shoulder design. So you start by knitting the saddles. You then pick up some stitches in a contrast colour to create this I-cord detailing. You then knit the front, so you do the same mirrored on both sides with short row shaping, and then you pick up from the back of the saddle shoulder pieces, you create another I-cord detail, and then you knit the back also with short row shaping. I'm just going to turn around briefly so you can see. And once you've knit the back, before you join the whole body together, you pick up stitches around the armhole and you create a I-cord detailing all the way around. And at this point you could actually stop and just turn this into kind of like a vest. But I picked up stitches, grabbed the live stitches that were ready over here, and knit the sleeve with some short row shaping. And the body is knit straight, and then before you do the ribbing, you pick up stitches along the front and all the way around the bottom, and you create another I-cord that runs all the way around. And then you pick up for the hem and create a corrugated ribbing, which is optional. You could just use regular ribbing. I'm just going to stand up so you can see that. And at the end, you pick up stitches all the way around the front and the neckband, and you create the button band and neckband at the same time, which is something I don't see done very often. I think it might be because it's easier to explain in sections, but especially if you're a beginner and you're not used to picking up stitches, it is hard to get this bit here to be nice and neat. And you won't be able to see it very well in this yarn, but there are some increases to shape this point. And yeah, I'm really pleased with it. It's a really fun design. It's really engaging. And I find my favourite types of patterns are the ones that don't look overly busy, they don't look overly maximalist, because I prefer to wear fairly plain garments, or I gravitate towards those more when I get dressed. But I really enjoy knitting something that is a bit more engaging. So there's almost always something happening with this one. I knit this in King Cole Forest Aran, which is a recycled yarn. And it is a really nice yarn to work with. It is definitely not Aran weight. I don't know why they call it Aran. Personally, it is a tweedy yarn and it's beautiful, but it is quite drapey and it is a 2-ply. And this is a very structured design because of all these I-cord details. So I am not 100% sold, personally, on how the drapey yarn works with the structure. And for that reason, I cast on a second sample. I have just had this pattern back from my tech editor. So it has been professionally graded and tech edited. I have in the past graded patterns myself, but I find it extremely time consuming and a bit of a headache, and I think that's what's holding me back from creating more designs. So what I really wanted to do was just get a few designs out there, because it's been a few years, and see how I get on. I have got a coffee on hand because it's morning, so bear with me while I slurp this occasionally. I have decided to cast on a second sample in a totally different yarn that has more bounce and is rounder and has more stitch definition, because I would like a few of the details to pop a little bit more. And so let me grab that for you now. It is in an awkward stage, so but it will sort of allow me to explain how this is constructed. As you can see, we've got the 2 shoulders, which are just rectangles. And what is really fun, now I'm going to put this in the pattern, you can just start knitting these shoulder pieces and use that as your gauge swatch, because if your gauge matches, you can just carry on. And then some of this detailing has already been done. As you can see, it curls a little bit at the moment. And there's lots of stitches being put on hold. So there's a lot going on at the moment, but once it's sort of all joined together, it's actually quite straightforward. And so we've got both of the front pieces, and I've just started on the back, and I'm just working on the back. So this is the yarn I am using. It is also King Cole yarn. This is Cherished. It is one of their acrylic yarns, and it is hands down my favourite acrylic yarn out there. It is low pilling, or so they claim, and I've made a few things and so far they've not pilled much. It is very soft, so you could use it for absolutely everybody in your life. It's inexpensive, it's machine washable, and it's not squeaky. And I think that's the main thing for me. What puts me off acrylics is when they're a bit squeaky. This one is not squeaky, I promise. I am using, I think the grey one's just called grey, and this sort of interesting creamy colour is called Stone. I should go back, I can't remember what the colours are called in this, but there aren't that many colours in Forest Aran, so you'll easily be able to find those. I will try and put things down below if I can find links, etc. So that is design in progress. Doesn't look very, it doesn't look like much at the moment, but it is extremely fun to knit, and I think it's going to look really elegant. And I am going to get some little pearl buttons because it's called the Pearly cardigan. So I think that's going to be really pretty. A little knitting tip for you that I follow and that it doesn't normally state in a pattern. When it tells you to put stitches on hold, such as the fronts here are both technically on hold, I just leave them on the cable. I don't place them on any stitch holders or anything. I mean, I have with these shoulder panels because I'm not coming to them for such a long time. But if you leave them on the cable and think about where you're placing them, you won't have to put them back on when you join. They're just all ready and there for you. So that's a little tip. You don't always have to put things on hold, especially in a cardigan. You could use a longer cable than you normally would, and you can just leave it there. That's yeah, something I find really helpful. Next up is another design of mine, which I started only a couple of days ago. It has no name. I'm extremely bad at thinking of names for patterns, so I do apologise if sometimes things don't have names yet. This is a chunky weight raglan sweater. As you can see, I've just split for sleeves. Ruby has to make another appearance. I have named this podcast after them for a reason, haven't I? Good girl. I have just split for sleeves. I am using is it King Cole as well? Drifter Chunky. It's like an acrylic cotton blend. There is a bit of a theme. I will come to that sort of towards the end about my sort of ethos of what kind of yarns I like to use. It's quite a flat, quite boring yarn. So what I've done is I'm holding it with this. This is Rico Design Make It Tweed. It is a very, very thin strand, as you might be able to see. And it has these little tweedy neps all the way through. And basically you can turn any yarn into a tweed yarn without adding any bulk to it. So it hasn't changed the gauge of the yarn at all. I'm knitting this on 6mm needles. And it is a raglan sweater. You can see the neckband is drooping a little bit. I'm not 100% sure whether that's going to be okay or whether I'm going to have to go back and pick up fewer stitches. This is the first time I am working on a raglan sweater in a really, really long time. I'm a huge fan of a raglan construction. I find it really, really enjoyable to knit. But I've had little success with raglans fitting me well, especially around the neck. The rest of the fit is always perfectly fine. Raglans and round yokes, I always end up having problems with my neck. And I wanted to talk about that briefly because I don't think I'm alone in this. You know when you have a sweater that hits you right there, like the neckband hits you right there, I find that extremely bothersome. It doesn't bother me wearing a turtleneck or a funnel neck or something like that, that's not a problem. I can't wear a sweater that hits me there because I just end up tugging on it all day long and then I don't wear it. And raglan sweaters generally have that problem. No matter how many short rows you throw in there, they just don't fit me and I end up giving them away. But I really enjoy the construction and I don't want to write it off completely. So I've been umming and ahhing how to combat this and I've come up with a solution. I have designed a raglan t-shirt in the past. And it wasn't so much an issue there because it had a raw neckline, it didn't have any ribbing or anything, so the neckline was a bit lower anyway, so that didn't bother me. But in a sweater where I want to have somewhat of a collar, I always have these problems. And from this experience of previously designing a raglan construction, I have learnt that the amount of stitches that you cast on at the top here for the sleeve in your initial cast on, if you halve that bit, that creates front and back neck depth. So if you, for example, if you look here, if I line up this sleeve, there we are, that is depth that's created purely by the sleeve. Now most designs will cast on fairly few stitches for the sleeve and increase at the same rate as the body for quite some time, as in like maybe every other row. So you have very little neck depth to work with to start off, especially in the smaller sizes. So I've decided to do the opposite. I've cast on quite a lot of sleeve stitches. As you might be able to see, that's quite wide. And instead of following the sort of standard increase rate situation, I've decided to increase much slower on the sleeve. So I've got more stitches to start off with and I'm increasing slower on the sleeve, meaning that I have more neck depth to work with to start off with. And then the other thing that I did, instead of doing pardon me, instead of doing a few short rows, I actually started the yoke flat and cast on stitches for the front neck. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. So from here, where the raglan line is, down to where the front neck is quite a big depth again. Now the only thing that creates that type of construction is quite a large neckline. And in order to combat this, especially because you've got quite a lot of back neck depth as well, and you don't really want the back of your sweater to be quite low. When I did the neckband, I put in, I'm showing you the back now, I put in decreases that are in line with the raglans, like that, and that just raises up, I'll show you like that just raises up the back neck a bit. Isn't that fun? All that tweedy speckles. This is such an enjoyable knit. And it fits me really well. I'm really pleased. Like I said, the neckband might have to be ripped out and redone. I might have to pick up a few fewer stitches. But other than that, I think I've cracked how to make a raglan that fits me well. So I'm really, really excited about that. This might be a pattern coming sometime soon, we'll see. I've got lots on the needles, so I should have started off by saying, full disclosure, I will never be showing all of my whips. I have quite a lot of dormant whips. I have recently, since deciding to start designing again, I have actually put a lot of my whips into sort of dormancy because I really want to work on my own designs. So I've just put some of them away, some of them I've ripped back. So I will only ever be showing you what I will hopefully have made some progress on by next week, or what I intend to actually finish. So that's that. I'm just dropping things on the floor now. Right, we've spoken about that and we've spoken about this. Let's talk about another design, shall we? There is a theme emerging. I like to have an idea, immediately cast on, get bored on the body. So get ready to see lots of yokes, right? One night when I couldn't sleep, which is quite frequent, I was playing around with it's not an app, it is a website. I can't remember what it's called, I'll try and link it below. Where you can, for free, you can create your own knitting charts. And I was just playing around with it. And this happened. Let's see if I can show you that properly. I'll show you on the sleeve because it's obviously been stretched there. There we are. How fun is that? So this is a round yoke design. I have finished both sleeves. I have a whole body to knit. Again, round yokes, same neck problem. This is something I've struggled with for a long time as well, because I find yoked sweaters, especially colourwork yoked sweaters, to be so impressive and so beautiful and so eye-catching, and they sort of, I don't know, I feel like there's some kind of accomplishment by being able to say I knit that myself if it's a colourwork sweater. My main issue with them, again, is the neck fit. I've always had problems with the neck on yoke sweaters. And I will talk about my revelation later. But what I've done with this one, and so far it fits really well, I started the yoke underneath the collar. I knit all the colourwork, and then I put in some short row shaping. So you can see that this is the back, and this is the front, and they've both been paused obviously in the same spot. So that tilts the whole yoke forward. And then I picked up stitches for the neckband and put short rows into the neckband as well, as you can see, like so. And so far that fits really well. I've also gone for an oversized yoke. Anything that's quite fitted in terms of yokes really doesn't work for me with a neck. So I can't fully report back whether this is going to be a great fit until I finish the body and and all the rest of it. But again, she has no name. I've gone for quite a low contrast, and I have blocked this just because I wanted to see whether the sleeves were fine. So I need a name suggestion for this if you have one. And the yarn I'm using, that's all I have left. So she might be cropped. This is Stylecraft Special Aran with Wool. It is those enormous balls of yarn that you can buy that are bigger than your head. I mean, this is still the size of my head, but they're normally, when you start off with they're bigger than your head. They're about 400 grams. And when I use a contrast colour, I can use just one ball for main colour for a whole sweater for me. I should have probably started off or put somewhere that I am a 35-inch, 90-ish centimetre bust. I tend to knit size 3 in most size inclusive patterns. That's also the size I designed to for myself. So for me, that works. These are very inexpensive. They are available in loads of colours. It's a bit of a low stakes project as well, which is great. And yeah, I really, really hope to finish this, or at least to pick it back up and do some movie knitting maybe. I have absolutely no deadlines for any of these things. So the only deadline I have for myself at the moment is the Pearly cardigan. I have posted on Instagram asking advice on what people think when it comes to test knitting in December. And the general consensus I got was that people are quite busy with gift knitting, advent knitting, etc. And it might be a good idea to call for testers in the Crimbo Limbo week, which is basically between Christmas and New Year, when hopefully your gift knitting and your advent knitting is done and you might be looking for a new project. So I'm hoping to finish sample 2 by then, or have it close to finish so that I can call for testers with both pictures, because I think that one will have a completely different vibe, and I think it's quite nice to sort of have 2 different styles to show. Dropping that on the floor as well, and back to my coffee. Right, 2 more, and they're both not my pattern, and they're both for other people. Is something I have stalled on a little bit, and I shouldn't. Again, the theme is strong, isn't it? One stops once the body is reached. You know, people talk about Sleeve Island. It's Body Island for me. Sleeves are fun. Sleeves break up the body. I normally put the body on hold, do a sleeve, knit a bit of body, go back and forth. And sleeves normally have decreases or something happening. I think this pattern requires no introduction. It is the Halibut Sweater by Caitlyn Hunter, which I was looking at for ages and put off by when it came to the extremely deep yoke. And then I thought, oh well, I'm just going to try it out and see, I might have to do some modifications. So the yoke is done, and my partner saw it and said, I quite fancy that one. Could that one be for me? So I said, sure. Although I really wanted it for myself, actually, because I'm a bit of a selfish knitter, but he never asks for anything knitwear-wise, so I really don't feel like I can say no. And he tried it on and it actually fits him better than me, so I've decided that it should be for him. The only modifications I've made, I think there were a few rows to be done after the yoke before the sleeve split, and I omitted those because the yoke was plenty deep enough at this point. I also changed up the short rows and put more short rows in. Caitlyn Hunter does weird short rows, to me at least. They are weird. If you think about starting at the back neck, she goes a little distance, goes back to the middle, a little distance to this side, back to the middle, and then goes further out. Nope, she does the opposite. She does the longest short rows to start with, and then the shortest ones And I find that creates this really weird wedge that has a tendency to sort of bulge out. So I didn't like that. So I did more, and I did them the way that I'm used to doing them. And as you can see, that is the back. And that is the front. So I've put in quite a few short rows, and the fit is really nice actually. And based off of knitting that's what sort of gave me the encouragement to start my own design and make another yoke sweater. I'm sorry if you can hear Ruby, she's wandering around. I don't know what she's looking for. I'm not going to be showing off too many project bags in this podcast because I find that part less interesting personally, but I need to show you this one. How incredibly gorgeous is this bag? This is a bag made by my lovely friend Daniela from A Knitted Suitcase. She has a podcast, she has an Etsy shop. She lives in Australia, but she got this sent to me via a friend who was coming to visit to the UK, so I didn't have to pay stupid amounts of shipping. And it is just the coolest fabric. I absolutely love it. And her craftsmanship is beautiful. So if you have a chance, go get yourself a bag from Daniela. I forgot to tell you what yarn I'm using, and I'm not sure if I can remember what it's called. I think it's from Wendy. I think it's an acrylic wool blend 50/50, which is perfect for a gift knit because it's not too squeaky or anything, but you know, my partner's not going to be hand washing anything. I know what he's like. So, in fact, I don't hand wash hardly anything now myself, but more on that later. Last whip, which is in this adorable little bag. See, now I'm showing bags, and I said I wasn't going to show bags. But I bought this recently and I love it, and it is from, can I remember? Handmade by Ellen from Sew and Inspire, and it was really inexpensive and it's really beautifully made, and I really, really love it. And it's a sock, which is going to be really hard to show because I've put it in one of these tubes. And they are wonderful for holding stitches. Let me just rearrange that. I am just using a ball of sock yarn that I had in my stash for absolutely ages. It's this colour changing yarn. I am knitting these for my dad. My dad is only knit worthy when it comes to socks. And he really wants socks. So for the first time this year, I'm making socks. I have very intermittent sock mojo, mostly not, and then occasionally it comes to me. So hopefully I'll get these done and sent off before Christmas. I am doing a 72 stitch circumference, and I'm following Lilykate Makes Finest Fit Socks pattern, which I had in my library as a gift for test knitting for her a while ago. And as you can see, this is a short row heel, and they don't normally fit me very well, and I just automatically assume if they don't fit me, they don't fit other people either, but you know, we're all different. But if you've got a big instep, they are a problem. And the Finest Fit socks, I don't know if I can show you, have this increase line. So you increase before you do the heel, and then you decrease back out. And you're not interrupting the flow of the stripes as you would in a heel flap and gusset, which is my normally preferred type of construction. And I really, really enjoyed doing this. I can't remember what this yarn is. It's in my socks yarn stash, and I use that as a contrast heel. And yeah, I am just on the straight bit now, which, as you might have figured out by now, is my least favourite part of any project. But I do need to get going with this because my parents live in Switzerland, which is also where I grew up. And I need to send this out to them because you know what the postal service is like. Closer to Christmas, it gets a little bit crazy. So anyway, that is all my whips and everything project-wise I have to speak to you today. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things before we finish. First of all, I wanted to talk to you about my recent knitting revelation. Now, any plus size knitters out there will probably be familiar with this trick, but it was completely new to me. If you are in a female body and you have a large bust, chances are that if you knit a size that is designed for your bust, it might be too big on the shoulders, especially if you just have a large bust and the rest of your body is quite small. So I know of a lot of knitters who will size down and then do some bust adjustments, darts, etc., and some increases in order to accommodate for their bust, because otherwise, depending on the design, it might just fall off the shoulders. So I know that a lot of plus size knitters are familiar with changing sizes for their body, and this is something that had never crossed my mind because I have a very small bust. But I was watching Laura Penrose from Penrose Knits, and I have in the past test knit and sample knit for Laura, and we chat every now and then, and she's a really lovely person. I'm sure you're all familiar with her. And she was talking about her recent yoke sweater, the magazine sweater, that's the one, and how she suddenly discovered that she was broad-shouldered. Well, that's what she initially thought she discovered, and then she realised that she's actually not broad-shouldered for her body, she's just small-busted for her body. So much like some plus-size knitters have discovered that their bust is quite big, the rest of their body is smaller in the charts, I think I fall into the same category as Laura in that my bust is very small, but the rest of me is not necessarily a size small. In like commercial clothing, fast fashion clothing, I am generally a medium. And in a lot of knitwear designs, if I simply measure my bust, I am a small. And it's just dawned on me, why would I be a small when generally ready-made clothing, only really a medium fits me? I'm 5'7" or 1.7 meters. Like I said, I've got a 35-inch bust, but I'm very flat-chested. So the rest of me is a little bit bigger. I've got quite big hips. And I think that's why a lot of yoke sweaters have never fit me, because I am knitting purely by measuring my bust and picking a size, and I haven't really thought about how that relates to the rest of my body. And I think that may be something that we need to encourage knitters to do a bit more, be a bit more aware of how the different dimensions of your body relate to each other, because a knitting pattern will most commonly just tell you, if your bust is this, knit this size. There might be some adjustments for bicep circumference, because we all know arms can be very different in different people, but generally speaking, the bust is the main measurement that people look at. And for me, I've discovered that I actually have to size up so that my shoulder width is accommodated for in general patterns. So because I normally fall between size 2 and 3, I will now always knit size 3. And in a yoked design, I might even jump up to size 4, just to make sure that things actually fit on my shoulders. They don't want to ride up here and cause me more front neck problems than I already have. I'm aware that I'm probably highly sensitive when it comes to front neck issues, but I know that I'm not alone. So that was my little revelation that I wanted to share with you. Maybe look at standard sizing charts, because designers have to use some form of chart to grade things from, because as much as we are all different, you have to have some kind of chart to work with, otherwise how are you going to grade a pattern? And if you discover that your bust circumference isn't typical for the rest of your body's dimensions, then maybe make some adjustments there. Either up or down, in my case up, in a lot of people's cases down. Second thing I wanted to talk about was, as you could probably tell, I am currently knitting with a lot of acrylic yarns. And I know that's always a little bit controversial, so I just wanted to have a quick chat about it. Up until fairly recently, I was an exclusive wool girly. Everything had to be wool or alpaca or silk and beautiful and natural. And I still believe in those fibres and I really enjoy those fibres. There are a couple of downsides for me now when it comes to those fibres, and I wanted to talk to you about them. First of all, a little over a year ago, I had a minor moth scare. And it was minor, but in my head it was major, and I had a bit of a mental breakdown. I sort of started thinking, oh my goodness, what if I get a massive infestation and all my knitwear is destroyed and I won't have anything left and I'll be devastated. I've put so much work into it and it's cost a lot of money because natural beautiful fibres are often not cheap. I'm not saying always, but often. So that sort of prompted me to make a couple of acrylic garments, things I can throw in the washing machine that I know in my head, to calm down my overthinking brain, will not get destroyed in a moth infestation. And then we got a puppy, and you've met her. Her name's Ruby. She came to us last Christmas, and suddenly there's dirt everywhere and they jump up and they might pull on your jumper and snag things. And if it's really expensive and hand wash only, that can often be a little bit frustrating to deal with. So that prompted me to work more with acrylic or cotton acrylic blends, etc., wool acrylic blends, any kind of blend that can go in the washing machine, essentially. So that was the start of that, but the main reason I'm actually sticking with it is a cost reason for me. I am quite a fast knitter. If I put my mind to it, I can knit a garment in a week, and I do have a full-time job as well. But I don't have children, so that helps a little bit in the knitting speed. And I was starting to think about how I would reduce my output a little bit. And that at the start of this year, I had big goals about I'm going to knit X amount of garments for sample knits and for other people before I knit for myself, so I don't have too many sweaters, etc., etc. Because I'm actually, I can't quite say I'm a minimalist, but I don't like having an enormous wardrobe full of clothing. But I produce sweaters like nobody's business. How am I going to balance those two things? And I have some lovely people in my life who graciously take my hand knit garments that I give to them and they wear them and love them. I've got a couple of friends and my mum who are very, very knit worthy, who are willing to hand wash and who are my size, so they can actually take on some of my not unwanted, but lesser worn garments. But that leaves all the people who I could possibly pass things on to that I can't pass things on to because they won't hand wash, or they don't know how to take care of wool, or they find it scratchy. And I do need to be able to pass things on because I can't keep everything I knit. And so initially this year I decided not to knit much for myself, and it completely took the joy out of all my knitting. And I also always try and sort of battle with stop spending so much money on yarn, etc. Because it can get a bit excessive sometimes, and sometimes I buy more yarn than I knit with. And so all these different factors, the moth issue, the dogs, the cost, the being able to pass it on to others, and like I said, I've got people I can pass things on to, but it takes an awful long time to knit a garment. And then on top of that, if it's cost me 60, 70, 80 pounds and I'm just handing it over because I don't wear it, it just feels like a lot. So I decided that I'm going to try and go down more budget friendly routes. And especially since we got our second dog, Pearl, I found that it's even more important to me that my garments didn't cost the world and are easy to wash, because she's crazy. Like, having a collie cross is crazy. Just putting that out there. I knew that before we got her, but boy oh boy, she is a lot, and she jumps up and she gets very excited and she's always covered in mud, and you know, she bites and she scratches, and she's just under 5 months, so I can forgive her for these things, and we're working on training her, but I don't want my knitwear to get destroyed all the time and then to get upset with her. And I have found that if I'm wearing something acrylic that costs me £10-15 to knit, if she snags it, doesn't really matter. If she gets it dirty, I'll just chuck it in the washing machine. I just don't get stressed over these things. And for all those reasons, I have decided to start knitting mostly with non-wool fibres. And I am aware of the ecological impact. I know that it's technically plastic, but I think in a way, knitting with acrylic and wearing it, and then if you don't wear it, passing it on to someone else who will wear it, for me is almost more sustainable than buying beautiful wool yarn, knitting with it, never wearing it because I'm too scared of getting it dirty because it was too expensive or too hard to care for, etc. That is not really sustainable either. So I'm trying to find a balance. I do really enjoy all these recycled yarns like this one because I think that's a fantastic way of reducing the impact. So I really enjoy these yarns, and I'm going to continue knitting with these yarns. And my main goal is to design with inexpensive yarn, because as a UK-based knitter who follows a lot of American designers, I have gotten used to yarn substitutions because I often can't even get hold of the yarn that the designers have used. The shipping and taxes, etc. would be so expensive that I just don't want to bother with it. So for me, that's fine, but I find that a lot of, especially beginner knitters, will see a recommended yarn. And if that would cost you somewhere between £100 and £200 to knit the sweater with, I personally would just hardly ever wear it. And I might be put off by the pattern because I don't really know how to substitute if I'm a beginner. And I am aware that a lot of designers will now put sort of substitution suggestions in their descriptions, and that's great. But I'm going to make this my thing. I want to be, hopefully, eventually, known as a designer who knits with inexpensive yarns, who focuses on budget-friendly things, and who takes away sort of the cliche, maybe, of cheap acrylic yarns that are being used for wonky, basic, old-fashioned clothing, and instead using it for elevated, elegant designs, because I think there's nothing more satisfying than making something that looks expensive and that's actually extremely cheap to make. So that is sort of the ethos that I'm following at the moment. If you have any input on that, or if there's anything that you would like to know more about, please feel free to reach out and have a chat with me. I would love to talk to you about it. I am hoping to film these every couple of weeks, if this all goes to plan. And I would like to finish off my podcast every time with sort of goals until next time, because I'm a very goal-orientated person. So, excuse all the coughing. I feel a bit out of breath. This feels a bit weird. Until next time, I would like to make good progress on my chunky sweater because I just want to wear that thing. It's December. It's cold and miserable. I think it's going to be really wearable, even if it doesn't become a design straight away. I would like to make really good progress on the Pearly cardigan because that needs to get ready for testing. And I need to get my dad's socks done and dusted, really, and sent off because I don't want to miss the Christmas rush of the postal service. So that's my goal till next time. And if you have any questions, if you have anything you'd like to talk to me about, please message me on Instagram or drop me a comment. And have I got anything else I need to show you? I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the dogs weren't too bothersome, and I will hopefully see you very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.